Thanks, Brittany, and thanks everyone for joining. Like Brittany mentioned, I'm Caroline. I'm Vice President and Chief of Staff here at UpSpring, and I'm really going to walk through what we're going to chat about today and give you a quick overview into the panelists. So, as we know, women are leading transformation across architecture, design, and construction. Across the industry, many women leaders are redefining what leadership looks like, shaping culture, building brands, and influencing how organizations operate and grow. At the same time, leadership is no longer defined only by hierarchy or technical expertise. It's expressed through visibility, storytelling, collaboration, and the ability to build trust. Today, we're going to talk about how women leaders are rewriting the rules of power in the design industry and what firms and product manufacturers can learn from that shift. I'm honored. Brittany asked me to moderate, and I'm joined by three incredible women in the industry. So I'll go ahead and introduce them all now. Melissa Hanley is a co-founder and partner at Studio Blitz, where she leads the studio's creative vision and workplace strategy work for clients including Google, L'Oreal, Lucid, and Okta. She brings a strategic approach to design, ensuring environments deliver both creative impact and business performance. Erica Holborn, CEO of Sandow Design Group, a collective of design media and service brands, including interior design, Lux, Metropolis, and ThinkLab. She leads a global platform connecting the architecture and design industry through content, research, and experiences, offering a unique perspective on how leadership, storytelling, and visibility shape influence across the market. And then we have Kaya Krinsky. She's the co-founder and lead visionary behind Toe Furniture, a global brand known for expressive, personality-driven design. Her perspective blends global influences with a deep understanding of how design connects to real life, shaping products that feel personal, intentional, and relevant. So thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you, Caroline.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to kick it off with a question for all of you. The first question is, where do you see women leaders most clearly changing how leadership actually works in the industry? Not just in theory, but in how organizations operate and grow. Erica, maybe we can start with you for this one.
Sure. I mean, I think if you look at architecture and design and that industry overall, and you look at the history of it, it's often been led by sort of like a singular creative vision, right, that others are expected to execute against. And I know Melissa is going to shed more light on this because it really speaks to how she manages and how she leads at Blitz. But I think that in general, women have been influential in sort of, changing how the vision comes to life because there's often this tendency to put more of an emphasis on collaboration, right? And creating these environments where people are more comfortable contributing ideas in a meaningful way. So it's not necessarily just about that singular voice or that singular vision. And I think they've also helped pave the way for, bringing more empathy into how teams are managed and how they're led. Because they often communicate with more context or are comfortable acknowledging challenges, whether it's on a project or a workplace, et cetera. So, I think all of that sort of changes how these organizations operate, how teams are engaged, how people feel about the work that they're doing, and then hopefully that impacts the outcome that whether it's a design and architecture firm or a brand or a business like ours, right, is operating on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially about the empathy part. I think women definitely bring a sense of vulnerability to different conversations that I think opens up room for more discussion, more innovation, more ideas. Melissa, do you want to add to that?
I would say that women have a unique relationship to time. And I think we have a way of viewing time in an elastic sense that means that we will think about problems differently, how we want to handle problems differently, how we want to handle schedules differently, how we handle our own lives differently. And I know a lot of women probably on this call are also parents, and you definitely introduce another dimension. I'm a new parent myself, to planning out your schedule, your time. And so I think moving women into leadership positions have brought a different understanding about what the workday can look like, what work can look like more globally, and then also what work schedules can look like. And I think that's really exciting is that we're no longer really confined by a classic 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. There's a much more flexible understanding of time.
Couldn't agree more, and congratulations to you. I'm also a new mom, so I completely agree. You need to be more intentional with the time that you have and more present when you're dissecting those challenges or working through your day to day. Kaya, what about you?
Well, we're a very female focused brand. We sell to females. We are primarily females that are running the business, really from top to bottom. So I really say all the time, this is our moment. It really, really is. I think it's because of the way that women function inside organizations and the way that we operate. I think that women tend to operate in a very integrated way. We're not just looking at one lane, and we're thinking about product, we're thinking about customers, we're thinking about brand, we're thinking about operations all at once. We're very, very amazing multitaskers. Like, um, our fellow panelists said, being a mom means that you have a lot of practice at this. I have three daughters and I have to do this all day long on the home front. So it's very natural that you're able to do it in a leadership position in the workplace. It's an amazing thing to be able to, you know, practice and be able to perform that. Um, I also think that women are very comfortable being very close to the business. And we don't just look at dashboards. We don't just look at you know, those type of things, but really understanding what's happening on the ground is a very strong suit of women, and really understanding your customers, again, your product. That closeness really helps you make faster decisions. So I like to say it's our superpower, and I really feel like our team feels the same way.
I would totally echo that. I think that being able to feel the business, I've had leaders come into the firm and be like, well, where's the button? What do you press? What is the trigger that happens on the spreadsheet that makes this thing happen? And there certainly is analytics and a lot of review that goes into it, and there's dashboards, but there's also a feeling like, all right, the business feels a certain way, so we're going to move these variables within the business. And I think that comes perhaps more naturally to women, that intuition about how the business is operating.
I would agree with that. I'm
Definitely.
going to say the same thing. It is that intuition. And I also think sometimes it's that intuition, not just about the business, but about people, that helps women more naturally kind of lean into, how you either develop somebody on a more individualized basis or how you meet their needs, and having that kind of flexibility that we're talking about just comes more naturally. It's not really black and white, right? It's just kind of looking at it in the context of what's going on and being more sensitive about it.
I think also women are incredible at adapting in all situations. We are masters at this. We have to do it with all of the punches that are thrown at us from the minute our eyes open in the morning to the minute we get to go to sleep.
And
So
frankly,
I
from the
think that,
oh, please, sorry, go ahead.
right? That's how it is. And that adaptability really helps you grow. It helps your business grow. So being able to just roll with the punches and not being phased by it in a major way and not getting crazy emotional, that is really what helps businesses grow. I know that works for us. So I think that that's why I feel like this is really our moment, being able to be in the positions we're in, and being females, being women is such a superpower.
I realize I'm derailing your whole agenda, Caroline. I'm
No,
not
I
going to.
love this. I mean, we're touching on so many important things. Like, I love that you're mentioning Kaya, it's our moment. We are super women. We have superpowers, and touching on a lot of different things about like the resiliency too that we bring to the workplace. Like you're saying, from the moment we wake up, there's so many different things that you're juggling, and how that multitasking and ability to function through different stressors and challenges gets layered into the day to day. So you're all touching on so many great things. I love it. Question for you, Melissa. As we're thinking about redefining authority in the workplace and in the design industry, authority has often been tied to individual authorship and creative control. How are you reshaping that model at your firm?
Yeah, I mean, this has like historically been kind of the nature of a practice. Certainly in architecture, there is a responsible control aspect. Somebody has to put their name on the drawings and seal them and take responsible control. So that has led to more singular authority historically. When Seth and I started the company almost 17 years ago, which is like kind of crazy to me, it was really intentional that we didn't put our names over the door. First of all, most design businesses fail in the first 5 years. So if you use it once, you've used it. So tread carefully. But we also wanted a name that really expressed our values and our view of what design is. And it's a team effort. It's a lot of people sprinting like hell at a singular goal. And that's why we're called Blitz. So it's about the football move. We're the two least sporty people you will ever meet, but we've used this football metaphor for our business. And I think that's really informed how we think about the business. We talk a lot about we. Obviously, we have lead designers. So somebody has to sort of define the vision for these things in the firm. But it's not a Starchitect firm. It's not designed to be, the partners named. And that really started at the very beginning. And so that has filtered through, I hope, through our company. So set with intention.
I love that. It's almost from the ground up, from the very beginnings. Erica, across the industry, are you seeing a shift in how authority is expressed, particularly among women leaders? And what impact do you feel like that's having on organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of what we've been talking about already, right? Which is it's just bringing more voices to the table, and I think women are more inclined to do that. And as more women grow into these leadership positions in these firms, whether starting their own firm like Melissa did, or moving up within established firms, I think it's just bringing together those creative voices, tapping into them, creating that sort of openness, and maybe bringing more humility into the
Hmm.
process, right? Not knowing it all. I love the Starchitecture kind of reference there, right? It's really about how do we solve this problem, and it's less about my way, and it's more about the right way and getting everybody's perspective and doing that. So I think you see that in general. I mean, some of that is probably a product of just all that's gone on over the past several years and having to rethink everything, whether you're a woman or a man or what have you. But that is something that I think has changed and shifted quite significantly in the traditional culture of these firms.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective, the humility aspect, and not always needing to have the answer to every question, but knowing you have the tools to go back and figure out how to solve it together as a team.
Right. It's more about executing it right than whose idea it was to execute it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Turning it over to you, Kaya, as a founder, how have you approached leadership in ways that differ from more traditional models in the industry?
I have a lot to say on this topic, actually. I think, uh, again, like really when you're in the driver's seat and you are a founder, um, I I think that it's really important that you think about your role and what impact and how you lead on a daily basis. I don't like the word boss. I know my colleagues know this. I think it implies a lot of control. And in reality, the best organizations, in my eyes, really run when there's teamwork. Um, my job as a founder is to set the direction very clearly. I am an extremely transparent, very clear leader, and make sure that the people in our organization are empowered to execute. I'm a really big believer in that. I'm also a very strong believer in not stepping away from your business. And I had this moment this past Sunday. I live in Miami Beach, and my three daughters, they're aged 19, 16, and 12, have been begging me for weeks to go to this super viral matcha place. And it's called Honeyvale. It's right near, it's a big college on here, U Miami, and it's like the most viral sensation. So I had some time this Sunday. I said, okay, let's go. We waited for 2.5 hours on this line. Now, I couldn't be more happy because I love seeing this. We're very much, we sell to the same demographic. So it's really important that I'm watching and I'm learning. And we got through this really long line outside. The weather, thank God, was great. I get inside and I see that Honeyvale is run by a mom and daughter who started the business together. The daughter is 1 year older than my daughter. So I get inside and I see that after this 2.5 hour line, the mom is standing behind the counter pounding like furiously the sourdough. Her daughter is cleaning tables, taking orders, managing staff. Now, mind you, they had 30 employees who all were thrilled to be part of this, college students who were thrilled to be part of this viral moment. It's the coolest place to be working right now. And the two of them did not stop for a moment. And I turned to my daughters. I love teaching moments. And I said, this is the lesson of the day, guys. We can't have a Sunday without a lesson, because they didn't have to be there like that. The business is successful. It's viral, right? They could have stepped back and no one would question it, right? The business is raking it in. Instead, they were right there with their team, making sure everything was running the way it should be. And that's exactly how I think about leadership. Bruce, who's my co-founder and husband, and I are very involved in every facet, every part of our business, not because we're controlling or try to be controlling, but we really want to guide. we want to be close enough to understand what's happening so that we can help our staff make better decisions. And I think what's interesting is that over time, our team almost wants it. They'll ask us to join calls, they will ask us to weigh in, just to like validate what they're thinking and where their direction is. And I think that that is really the right way. It's not this top down dynamic anymore. It's more collaborative and with very, very clear leadership again. And I think that that's where the shift is. In the past, it was always like the boss makes the decisions, and the Don Draper times, it's like you do this and you do this and you do this and you execute, and if you're doing this great, you'll get your paycheck. And to me, leadership isn't that anymore. It's not about removing yourself when things are great. It's about staying close enough to set the standard and support your team and make sure that the business is evolving in the right way. And I think that when your team feels like they have the support, it is incredible to see the empowerment that I see and I feel when they feel like you've got me, you support me, I offer feedback. I'm a very, very verbal and, I voice my opinion, but I think that when you listen and when you're there to support, you have an incredible outcome.
Yeah, I think that's great. Go ahead, Melissa.
I think there's a curiosity in that, Kaya, though, that's like really, really lovely to hear. It's like you and Bruce aren't done. You're still learning, you're still evolving. You want the business to still evolve. I mean, we talk about Blitz always being in beta, and we're constantly redoing, reassessing systems, reassessing processes, and really soliciting feedback from everybody who's using the tools on a daily basis. Because at some point, you do get a bit removed from the doing. Even though we're a small company, there's just some things I don't do anymore. And I love hearing from the team and really getting the honest feedback. And if somebody comes from me and says like, hey, this thing is just causing me a headache. I know we always do it this way, but can we change it? And I think we've developed a nice culture that really invites that kind of evolution. And I think the businesses that said, well, this is the way we've always done it, they're not in business anymore. Like they didn't survive the last 5 years. They're gone. Or they, we're part of the major mergers and acquisitions that we've seen. It's because they're not keeping pace. So I think that curiosity you're describing is really resonating with me and really, really refreshing.
And I would just say, we don't work directly in design, right? We are related to the design industry, but ultimately we're running a media and services business. And Sandow operates very much the same way that you're talking about, Kaya. I mean, I am like in the weeds, sometimes, and Brittany used to work for Sandow Design Group, so she knows this. I'm very much engaged, and it's not because I don't empower people or I don't want them to do good work or to be developed and have a path. I think we do a good job of that, but it's because I care, because I want to know, because we're never done, to your point. We're always working in this constant state of entrepreneurship at our business. And it as a media first business, it's really kind of set us apart, right? Because we are constantly evolving and thinking about what we do and how we serve the design industry and the audiences that we reach in a completely different way. And the only way to do that, the way that things are moving so quickly, particularly in the media world, is to be close to it and to understand what the clients want and what the designers want and what our people are seeing. So I think that is very, very, very important from a leadership perspective. Sometimes I say we have a very flat organization, and I think you were saying this, Melissa, like somebody's got to put their stamp on the architectural drawings. Like somebody's got to be in charge, somebody's got to own it. But it's kind of like how you own it, right? Is what Kai is talking about. It's like, how do you go about doing that? Which traditionally in business has been looked at very differently than I think it's looked at today.
I think we all
Yeah, I
enjoy
agree.
what we do. Like we don't do this because we don't like it. Like we work in really fun sectors of the world. This is
So true.
cool. I want to keep doing this.
Yeah, and I think what you're all touching on is that energy and passion that sort of trickles through and encourages and creates engagement within teams too. Like you're saying, that collaboration is so important. Erica, you mentioned it before, like it's not top down. And again, you don't always it's not about having the right answer or who has the right answer. It's about that energy transferring off one another to create that best idea and to continue to innovate. So I love this. And I think we really sort of to hit on to that authority and what that looks like. And it doesn't need to be that one person, that one boss making that decision. It's a collective group of individuals that are coming together to really navigate this. So I think I'm going to toggle into a different section of our conversation, more about storytelling, visibility, and influence. And starting with you, Erica, what are you seeing from women leaders who are effectively building visibility and influence in the design industry today?
I thought about this question a lot because there are so many examples and so many different ways of women that are doing this. But one that sort of immediately came to mind um, is a woman that we had the opportunity to spotlight at the Interior Design Annual Hall of Fame last year, and we actually made a donation to our nonprofit. You may be familiar with Maya Bird Murphy, and I'll talk a little bit about her organization in a minute. But I think what is special about her in terms of creating that influence and creating that visibility is that, you know, she, like many other women out there in the industry, are trying to not just build a business, right, that makes money. I mean, obviously, it's helpful if your business makes money, but like things that are purpose driven, that they're passionate about, right? That's what we're talking about. Like if you're passionate about something, you want to be in the business, you want to bring it forward. And there is a lot of just sort of inherent, I think, ability to be influential when you're very passionate about doing something that is meaningful to you and the work is meaningful. So what Maya created is something just really, really interesting called Mobile Makers. And it essentially brings design and architecture to these underserved communities, right? And K through 12 students. And she's got this it's essentially a retrofitted food truck, right? That she brings out in front of these schools and these underserved communities, and she produces these workshops for them to expose them to things that they would never be exposed to before. And then she engages them in doing pop-ups or public installations, not in any area, but in these communities themselves, so that people come and they see and they experience, and they don't have to go elsewhere to get it. And I think, doing something that you are passionate about that really has purpose, is one way to really be influential, to kind of have your voice be heard and to gain that visibility in the industry today. And so I think the women that are gaining traction are putting that kind of energy out there and are thinking about those things in a different way than just starting a business. Like, what do I really care about? What do I want to do? And how do I make it happen? And then, people get behind that vision and they want to support it.
I think that's such a great example. And I think especially over the past 5 years, we really realize now more than ever, like how important that passion is, but also the community impact driven projects are as well. That's great.
Right. It's like creating something that people want to connect to, is
Hmm.
a helpful way of becoming more visible in terms of what your purpose is.
Yeah, because I think people want to connect and people want to care. People are reading between the lines for things too. So I think that's a great example. As a follow-up, Kaya, how do you think about visibility, not just for the brand, but for the people and the values behind it?
I think visibility is, there's two parts to this I can answer. I think visibility for a brand today is so incredibly important. People today are not buying the product anymore. Of course, they're buying the product, right? They check out and hopefully buy the sofa, but they're buying into a point of view. And if they don't see you and they don't hear you or understand what you stand for, you don't exist to them in 2026. For Tav, for us, visibility shows up in a few different ways. It's how we communicate the aesthetic that I would like to communicate, on our furniture and home pieces to the consumer. How we show up across all of our channels. We're really large on social media, so it's really important that we show up correctly and with intention. And honestly, how founders show up is so important as well. I'm a pretty private person, so my social team, I know she's on right now, absolutely goes crazy, and she's like, come on, like go on and show your face, make sure that you're present, speak, show your life. And we found a happy medium of what works and how I can show up with, honesty and intention, but that consistency and that builds the familiarity in your customers, and familiarity builds trust. It also directly impacts your growth. I mean, I saw the difference with my own eyes of what it did when we started doing this with intention. The more visible and the more clear your brand is, the shorter, very much shorter, the decision-making process becomes from your customer. They don't have to figure you out. They already feel like they know you. And that's a really important part of buying or using or a product or a service today. Um, Internally as well, visibility matters very much too. Teams perform better when the vision is visible. Like we have this on a weekly call. We go through our broad vision because everyone understands what they're building when you do that and why they're building it. What is it? What is your brand ethos? What is your purpose? Because sometimes as a founder, you turn around and I know that you guys can relate and say, well, what am I doing here? Like you're caught up in the day to day and the emergencies and the crazy and the chaos. And you're like, wait, stop. What are we doing? What is like the end goal here? So visibility isn't just about being seen. I feel like it's about being understood. It's about being remembered. It's about being trusted. The word trust is so big today. Consumers are very careful with their dollar. They want to make sure that whatever they're buying, there's a reason behind it. There's a story behind it. They're buying something that has, purpose and environmentally sound and all of those things. And it's very important that you communicate all your efforts to your consumer. I remember when we had a very big moment where we started using recyclable fabrics. And so we had this recyclable fabric program going, and our head of social was like, no one knows you're doing this. Like you're doing these efforts because of course Bruce and I cared so much, but tell them because people want to know that they're buying something that has this, incredible effort and this with intention. So I think that that's a very, very important part of anything you're doing, whether you be in the product or service industry. And God bless social media because it helps you do it in a beautiful way. So, yeah.
I was just going to
Yeah,
add, Caroline, to
go
what
ahead, Erica.
I was saying. I mean, I think only because I work on the advertising and the marketing side of things, what you're saying is so true, Kaya. Like if a tree falls in the forest, no one hears it, does it really make a sound, right? So it is that storytelling aspect of things and getting that message out there about, what does your brand stand for? What are you doing? Whether it's recyclable, materials or any other innovation or social impact or anything that your brand is really committed to. And I think what you're saying is true. Like your team has to understand it and your audience has to understand it because it has to be authentic. The consumers today
Hmm.
will see right through it. You can market your brand however, you want to, and you can message whatever it is that you want to say, but it has to start from within the organization and then go outside of the organization in this very authentic, almost like provable way, if you will, in order for it to resonate. And I agree with you. I mean, that has a direct correlation to the success of a brand. Obviously, you've seen that since you've launched Hub.
It is. It's
Yeah,
so
I agree.
important. It's not
Yeah, and it
easy.
can't.
It's not easy, but it's important.
Yeah, I think you're both touching on something too. It can't be disjointed, which is why I like that you're hitting on that the external way that you're communicating your brand, you need to speak that same vision and ignite that passion internally too. Everyone needs to be aware of what is the goal? What does this look like? Especially as we're saying, consumers have so many choices today, whether that's the type of product that they want to purchase from the home or the restaurant that they want to go to, the hospital that they're going to stay in, the hotel and that they're going to travel to and book. So it's so important to be able to really communicate what that authenticity looks like. I love that. Melissa, as a follow-up to you, how do you see women leaders balancing expertise with voice and perspective?
I really see them as intertwined. I think it's a great credibility builder the minute you can um, offer something that really adds value, and that really comes from expertise, and there's not a shortcut to it. Like I wish there was a way to shortcut the 10,000 hours, and there really isn't. AI hasn't done it yet, but I think that expertise is so valuable. It gives you a seat at the table. It's really hard to get, and I think that gives you visibility because you become a trusted partner. And so the calls that I get routinely are from folks that I've worked with for a really long time in other sectors, whether they be brokers or facilities ops or owners. I'm looking at this thing, I'm thinking about this project in this place, I've got this weird problem, what do you think about London real estate? Like, I don't know. So it's that is earned, and that is valuable. And that makes me more visible because I'm a trusted partner. Or I get to do fun things like this. Like I get to be on a panel and chat about being an owner. So yeah, I think it's important and it's earned.
Couldn't agree more. We're talking a lot about trust and that energy and that passion and how to infuse that. And we're also starting to talk about like the culture and then the values of an organization. So, Kaya, I'm gonna bring it back over to you since you started to hit on some of these things. How do you feel listening to your team, your customers, and the market influence how you lead and how your organization continues to evolve?
I think it's really important to be a really strong and good listener. I love the phrase like you can, I hear, I don't, I think it's like you can hear, but you're not listening. And I think that listening is such an important part of being a founder. Um, I listen all day long, right? Whether it be to customers, to the market, to my colleagues. But it's really important as founders that we don't react to everything, impulsively. I think that's a really important distinction, especially if you're running a business in the space I'm in, because you're constantly getting input. I have opening our DMs, I have loads and loads of fun comments from customers saying, make this in red. And you haven't, I hate red. And they're like, you haven't made it red. I'm like, how do I say this? Like red is, it's just not, not my vibe, but you're going to constantly get input. Um, your team has ideas, clients have ideas, vendors are telling you one thing, the market's telling you another thing. So if you try to respond to all of it, you really end up losing your point of view. So for me, listening is also like really about like pattern recognition. If I hear something once, I'll note it down. I like doing that. And if I hear it 5 times in different ways, like somebody can say something and then a couple weeks or days down the line, you hear it again and 5 times from different people, then and in different ways, I'll really start to pay attention because that's how I know. The same is with my team. I want them, I encourage them to speak up. I want them to challenge me. I remember we had a hire, and a couple weeks in, she was like, I'm like, really? And she's young, she was young, and she said, I'm really surprised that you're like listening to me. I don't, I mean, if you feel like my ideas are unhinged, if you can just like call me out. And I'm like, I'm listening to you. I'm hearing you. You are the future, first of all. Let's be real. You know so much that I don't know. I learn from every single thing in person. But um, if I wasn't listening and I didn't actually value what she was saying, we wouldn't have certain growths in different areas that we're having now because she is so much better at this and she does know. So it's important that I am the listening ear. Um, and I think that's where strong leadership comes in. There's no ego here. You're here to do this and build this together. And your team members are on your side. They're on your team and they want to build collectively. And if you really believe that we're all just doing this together, and that's really truly how I feel. Their ideas are meaningful, and you do. It's a very fun thing and great thing for me to listen because I love what they have to say and their input. So I think it's important. Listen, but don't react to everything.
Yeah, I think that touched on something Erica's mentioning earlier as well, that empathy that women bring to the table. I think that ability to listen and to validate and to show people that they're heard. And then again, that's great advice. Like you're saying, listen and take it in, but don't immediately be reactive and make that next decision. Stay true to your core ethos and your brand values. That's great. Melissa, as a follow-up, are you seeing women leaders approach culture, collaboration, or mentorship differently? And what impact do you feel like that has?
I think I would tie this back to the kind of elastic approach to time, and that generally we have a much more, I would say, like understanding view on how work is being done and what we can expect from folks. Like at the end of the day, we all want a great product, whether it's a great design or a great sofa or a great magazine. Like we're all looking for something that's truly excellent, best in class, best in field. How we get there can happen in a lot of different ways, and it doesn't have to be a strict linear process. It rarely ever is. And so I think we're able to look at this in a much more fluid way. I have several people in my firm who are working alternate schedules because one of them heads off at 3 to do pickup and comes back online at 6. And it's like, the work is excellent. So do I care that it's happening asynchronously? I do not. And I think there's that sort of fluidity and openness and willingness to think creatively about how work gets done and what the ultimate product, how the ultimate product is created. And I think that's really interesting. It's an interesting time. And frankly, the tech is supporting it in a way that it didn't 5 years ago. Like we just the inflection point of COVID that really advanced a lot of our businesses and has allowed so much asynchronous productivity has been fascinating and fabulous. And if you can grab onto that with both hands and just ride it, it's really changed the way in which we practice and opened up a lot of opportunities for people that maybe would have been disenfranchised before. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's
You definitely did. I was going to say that flexibility is key. And again, that's touching on something that we mentioned before. Like if we don't continue to innovate after these past few years, the brands aren't going to evolve. And figuring out what that looks like for different organizations and those different employees so that they can feel trusted. It goes back to building that trust, building that culture that probably means a significant amount to that team member that you have. So I think that's a great example. And a follow-up for you, Erica. Do you see a gap between how organizations talk about culture and how they actually operate? And where do you feel women-led organizations tend to stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always easy to talk about culture in sort of an aspirational way. But then how that like manifests itself in your day-to-day operations is not always how you kind of envision it when you look at sort of like your value statements in your orientation deck or whatever that is, right? And I think it's become even harder to maintain that culture for some businesses. I know even A&D firms, many of them are going through this right now because since COVID, right, it sort of fundamentally changed how we work in a lot of ways, right? I mean, we are a remote first organization, and you sort of take how all of that shifted, whether it's remote or hybrid or even, organizations that require people to come in every day. It's so different than it was if we roll back to 2019. That everybody's had to look at how do you sort of maintain and manage that culture in today's work environment. And like for us, I would say the pendulum sort of swung in one direction and then another, and we probably need to, bring it a little bit back more to the middle, right? It's like COVID hit and we were remote first, and I don't know, we had committee after committee. I was doing Ask Me Anythings with every employee in the company. We were doing roundtables, and it became almost like too much, right? It was like a forced way. There were virtual events here, there, and everywhere, and I think we kind of lost sight of what it was that we really needed to accomplish and wanted to accomplish. But I think about it, often, right? Like making sure that our team understands what we stand for, communicating that out. We have ways that we do that to keep the organization connected, but it can be hard, right? Because if you do work in an entrepreneurial environment or you have sort of a scrappy or a lean team, the work can take over. And where I think women, maybe have more of a tendency to sort of foster the culture that you set out to keep for your team is really what we've talked about already, which is, there is this tendency to be more collaborative, right? Maybe more communicative. Kaya, or I think it was Kaya that was talking about like that transparent communication. I am known to be a very transparent communicator, right? And so, bringing that forward and giving context to people, why are we doing this in the business? What is the business setting out to do? Is something that perhaps women are more inclined to make happen. Now, that said, I have worked with and do work with a number of men who are very good and are very, about this and making sure that the culture is maintained and that we're communicating and we're being collaborative. So I think it's more that maybe women put more of an emphasis on that in the workplace than men do, if we're generalizing. But it's not easy. It just takes, it's like you have to be constantly conscious of it. I love Kai that you do this sort of every week, just reinforcing what is that vision, what is that mission.
I want to double click on that the culture component really can come from anywhere and be led by anyone. I mean, it's something like I know in my own leadership style, I am not like an empathy first person if I'm, honesty with our circle of friends here. And so I've really tried to hire people that can bring that to make up for something that's a weakness in my own style. And the people who are really leading the in-office culture are our senior designers, the project managers, their associates, they're people, I think they might even be on this call. They're like awesome individuals that are filling in the gap in my own leadership expertise or skill set. And so recognizing that, is also something I think that we probably maybe do well, even if it means that we're not doing something else well. So we know how to hire for it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I also think it takes an emotional skill set to be able to identify
A
and
lack of
be
emotional skill set.
to not be afraid to admit, okay, these are the areas where I need to hire a team member to strengthen overall our culture. So I think it's great to point that out. So we're starting to talk a lot about trust and emotional connection and brand leadership. So Kaya, I have a follow-up question to that. Do you think women-led brands approach connection and experience differently? And how does that show up in the way a brand is built?
Well, I'm lucky because I work alongside my co-founder and husband every day in the same office. We sit inches away from each other very intentionally, of course, because I feel like we really get to play off each other's strengths, and we really help call out each other's weaknesses and fill in, the blanks. But I don't think it's something that as women, we're intentionally trying to do. I just think it's something that we're, naturally good at. I just think women are very tuned into the whole feel how things feel aspect. And in our world, in my world, the interiors and furniture and design is everything. So no one is buying something like I was saying before just because they need a chair, for example. They're of course they're buying it because they need a chair, but they're buying this specific chair because it's how it makes their space feel, how it reflects them, and how it makes them feel when they walk into that room. So we do that a lot at Tav. We always talk about like, well, how does this feel? And I think not in a very fluffy way, but in a very real way because of just the industry I'm in. Does it feel exciting? Does it feel elevated? And I think that also goes, not just in the product base, but with everything. I remember being on a couple of weeks ago on a website development call with that team, and we were talking about something simple like the pop-up language, the language that comes up on those dreaded pop-ups. But that was something that I kept saying, like, how does it feel? If you were a customer coming here and you were reading this exact sentence, what would the feeling be? Because that's such an important part of things. Now, I do think that being able to work alongside Bruce gives me such an added element to things. So while I'm able to do that end of things, he has a lot more financial understanding than I do, and financial and fiscal responsibility than I do. And that is a very huge part of things. He's very financially disciplined, and operationally, he's very structured. So when being able to use his superpower alongside my feeling superpower really helps us be a great team. And I think that the key really is when you're working alongside your husband and a male counterpart is that you actually lean into it instead of fighting about it. So when you recognize it, and it's a great exercise to put things on paper. I love doing it. It sounds cheesy, but it really, really works. You're like, I'm good at this. You're good at this. So the line down the middle, and you really can see things very clearly, and you see like where you're helping each other. So I do think that women have a lot of strengths. I do think that being able to work alongside him, he is so strong in so many things as well. So I'm lucky that I get to, have him do a lot of things I'm not good at.
I think the concept of partnership is something that we don't talk enough about. We sort of touched on the idea of individual authorship, but I mean, I think I'll acknowledge this is a team sport, but finding your person who supplements. I also work with my husband, who's also my co-founder, and we've been described as the gas and the brakes. I'll let you decide who's who. But I think it's incredibly valuable to have somebody. You don't have to marry your partner. Not always the best choice for everybody, but to find that person who's your person who can really fill in the gaps, and 1+1 can equal 3. We do a partner review every single year, and have done every single year, where we go back to those like initial values that we wrote, the initial value statement, and also our roles. Like we've flip-flopped who's CEO many times, who's running the kind of creative vision, who's the technical lead. Like we have flip-flopped. There are 2 years where I did nothing but worked on operational tools and processes. I've been lead designer, done it all. And I think that's really valuable, is to constantly reassess, because you change as people, and you change in your life, and you change your priorities, and the business requirements change. And so just being fluid, but finding your person, find your person. Don't do it alone.
I think it's also important to not, box by gender. So like saying, oh,
Hmm.
we're good at this because we're females. Like our head of operations, she's on this call too, listening in, is the strongest female I've ever met. She is logistically genius, and she does everything like with incredible calculation and precision, but she almost operates like people meet her and they're like, you're like, you have man brain. And she's like, no, I do not. This is how I operate. And it's so important not to put this in a box because you can have, I look at her and I'm like, oh my God, she like so many times she's in a room full of males. I'm in a very, very, very male oriented industry, extreme. And very, very often she's the only female in that room. And they're like, whoa, you're amazing. And she's like, guys, we're all like, it's even playing field. I'm just female. So I think, I think it's important that you don't, box certain typical things, or typical associations or into that.
Yeah, I think it's about cultivating the skill set. It's funny, my parents have been co-founders of a business for many years, so you're touching on a lot of things I'm familiar with. But my parents are the same way. My dad is the gas, the big picture ideas, and my mom is how are we going to execute this? What does the operational efficiency look like? How does this actually make sense? So it doesn't need to be a woman or a man. It needs to be the right person in the right seat, and that energy and passion and trust and collaboration, everything we're talking about needs to be ingrained in each individual team member. So I love these examples. It's great. Erica, from your perspective, are brands led this way performing differently in terms of engagement and loyalty? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about
Go
that.
ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about that, right? I mean, the building that trust and having that consistency and being authentic in terms of what your brand ethos are is really it absolutely impacts how brands are performing, right? Because of the way that consumers buy today and the way that they think about the brands that they want to engage with. Just like Kaya just said, like you can get a chair from a lot of different places, but why do I want to buy it from Taub, right? I mean, their ethos are don't be boring. And it kind of carries through from marketing to the social storytelling all the way through. If you look at sort of the design of their product and how they kind of stage the rooms and what have you, it's got that feeling. And if you can communicate that effectively to your audience, then you're going to reach the people that want that, right? That's what they want to buy. But I think you can also like you can look at it a different way. If I think about a brand like Kohler, which is a generations old brand, right? And you've got somebody like Laura Kohler, if we want to talk about, a strong female presence in leadership. And, she is beyond committed, right, as the chief sustainable living officer to sustainability, social impact, all of those things for the Kohler brand. And they don't just talk about it, right? They just don't just say it in their marketing campaigns and what have you. They live it, right? They have a way that they sort of develop products where it has to kind of go through this process. I think it's called design for environment, and it kind of considers, right, environmental impact in everything that they develop there. So they're bringing it all the way through their product. And even before COVID and before we were all sort of thinking about flexibility in the workplace and taking care of our teams and all of those different things, Kohler was introducing this flexible workplace program for their staff, right? To have that work-life balance. So that is sort of ingrained in the culture of the business. They message it out through their campaigns and then they include it in their product development. And when you have a brand that does that from kind of start to finish, the people know that, right? They see it at every turn and then they understand the brand. And if they care about those things, you're going to have that loyalty, right? People make those buying decisions because of what the brand stands for.
Yeah, I love that example. And I think that, like we're saying, that brand ethos, those brand values need to trickle in through every single touch point and every single thing that you do as a company.
And if it's not,
Melissa, oh, go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say something, which is, sometimes we're working with brands and they feel like they really need to have a sustainability message because that's important, right? It's like, okay, you can't like you have to actually have that before you can just like message it out, right? Again, it is that authenticity and it's sort of like you can't like you sort of can't create a design to create a culture, right? Like the design has to be created around the culture, and it's a similar type of thing. And I think that is just being, understanding what your business is about or what your brand is about, and then designing it accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing to be successful. You have to understand your customer and then go from there.
Years ago, I had a founder say, "Well, we have to put a pool table in the lobby because everyone has a pool table in the lobby." And I'm like, "Will you actually use the pool table in the lobby?" No, but
Right.
everybody else has the pool table in the
Right.
lobby.
I don't want them taking breaks to play pool, but we'll put a pool table in the lobby. It just doesn't work.
I no, 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 no.
It's too funny. A pool table that will collect dust. To round out this, Melissa, at Blitz, how does that emphasis on connection show up in leadership or client relationships?
It's huge. We start every single day at Blitz with a roundtable conversation with the entire firm. So we have a 15-minute kickoff, and there's always some random wacky question. If you were a yogurt, would you be fruit in the bottom or fruit mixed in, and why? And it's a great way for us to just connect as humans, start the day with something a little light. On Mondays, we do talk about what's happening in the firm. So we have a little business chat, but for the rest of the days, it's really about personal connectivity. We're separated by 2 physical studios in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and we have a few remote folks. So this is a great way for us to communicate as people and break down those kind of barriers that might be a challenge, because we do staff projects location agnostic. And I think that sort of informality and personal connection really seeps through all of our processes and our connection with our clients. We have a really high repeat client rate. It's over 65%, which I'm incredibly, incredibly proud of as an owner. And I think that comes because people like working with people. At the end of the day, we have great processes, and obviously I think we design some nice things. But you want to work with somebody who is a nice person and who you get along with, because we're all doing hard things and we're doing it together. So let's be nice with one another and try to communicate.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I want to round out this discussion. This has been such a great conversation. There's so many different pieces and tips of advice, but to leave everyone with one thing that they could learn or one thing that they could put in place, if firms and manufacturers adopted more of the leadership approaches that we're starting to talk about today, what would they need to start doing differently? Kai, maybe we start with you.
I think that rules are really out the window. I'm not a very rule abiding person. So maybe this is just my personal reflection of the times. But I think that the rules that used to exist with any business, whether it be a firm or one individual, there are really very few rules. There are more young founders and more young bosses than ever. I think it's like now before the age of 24, there are so many entrepreneurs that you wouldn't even think this could happen 10 years ago. And I think the biggest shift that's happening is being able to be honest about how we operate, how businesses operate. There's a very large gap in a lot of businesses that I see in how they present themselves externally and how they are internally. And I had this situation where we worked a lot with like very large beauty brands and clothing brands in collaboration. And there was a massive one that was on the phone with me 2 weeks ago. And there's not their founder, but their staff. And need I say that we were like shaking from the way that they were, just their tone of voice and how they were talking and conducting themselves. And I got off the phone and I said to, my team, this is so crazy because on the outside, I buy from this company all the time. I love their product and I love the brand experience, and their app is amazing. And then on the phone, I was like, wow, if this is their internal way of like talking to partners, or this is just like, I'm so turned off I will never buy from them again. And really, it's so important because whatever you are going to embody externally, you want to be embodying internally as well. Alignment is so incredibly important. Does your customer feel that experience that actually matches your brand internally? Does your team operate the way that you want to present yourself externally? Are you really listening? Or are you just saying that you are? We have a very customer first approach at Tav. Customer is always first, no matter what, no matter if they have an issue, no matter if they are wanting to make a sale, they are always first and they're always at the forefront with everything that we do. And I think everyone in this room, especially, knows when something like feels off, right? And it's a very, very important thing that I had to learn the hard way and really take time to embody. The second thing I think that is very important is letting go of the way that leadership used to look, that it needs to look a certain way. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room. I think it was Erica, said you don't need to have all the answers. You could say there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know right now. I'll do the research and I'll get back with you. Like that is such a powerful point, not just as a business owner, by the way, but as a mom too, of saying, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. Like, let's collaborate. Let's figure this out. I'll do research. You do research. Let's come together and regroup. But you do need to have a clear point of view. You really do, because people, staff, colleagues, they need a leader, and you're not the friend. You are the leader, and you need to be able to stand up and, voice how you feel, but of course be collaborative. So people are drawn to clarity. I certainly am. And I think that as you can be a clear leader and, be kind at the same time, it's very important. But I do think that the way that things is very much not working anymore. And I think that adaptability, like you were saying, Melissa, being fluid, telling your staff member that they're able to work from 6 to whatever time they're working, and you being supportive of it is so big, because life is not the way it used to be. There is no more 9 to 5. My staff sometimes checks in with me at 9 o'clock at night. Yes, it is incredible. And I don't want that for them. I'm not like, yay, you need to be working at 9, but their hours are not 9 to 5. So I think that being able to be fluid and be adaptable is an incredibly important and again, a superpower of being a founder today.
I think that's all great advice. And I love what you're saying about kindness and how important that is. I feel like sometimes it gets forgotten. Melissa, what about you?
I had somebody say that clarity is kindness years ago, and that has been a mantra for a really long time. That I couldn't agree more with that. I think that it's important that we approach things as clearly as we can, redirect where we can, not let the wheels come off if things start spinning. And so I think that clarity is kindness, and we try to lead with that here.
I love that. And Erica?
I mean, I agree with so much of what both Kai and Melissa just said, but I think, when we talk about sort of being fluid and being open-minded to how we need to operate, knowing who we are and how we want to operate, but also having that openness. The world has changed so much, and it's like we're not going to put that genie back in the bottle. I think it's just going to continue to change, right? So there is the one thing I would say to maybe add to what Melissa and Kai said is, you sort of do have to strike that balance between being really open and really flexible and fluid and what was talked about before, which is, but you also have to kind of like filter it a bit, right? Because you have to take into consideration, like, what do we still need in order to be able to operate this business, right?
No
And
red sofas.
yeah, and how do we execute that? So it's being open and not getting stuck in your old ways, but also sort of remembering what the business needs in order to be able to operate successfully. And sometimes those two things are not completely lined up. And it's just, as a leader, making the decision about what's going to fly and what's not going to fly, right? Being open to it, but also kind of filtering that through the realities of your business in order to make sure it's successful.
Amazing. This has been such a fun conversation. Thank you all for being here today. I want to turn it over to questions if there are any, Brittany.
No, we're all set so far. I just want to again reiterate, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be sending out the recording of today's session via email later this afternoon, so please feel free to share that with team members who you feel like might find it valuable. And also, all of our previous discussions are available on demand in The Circle gallery on the weareupspring.com website. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a great rest of your day, and happy Women's History Month.
Yes. Thank you all.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.